Hello my dear students, welcome back to my channel. This is Indira coming back to you once again. I hope all of you are studying well at your homes, and welcome to all my other viewers also and all youngsters who are encouraging me by subscribing my channel. The same trend I want you people to continue, so please subscribe my channel and encourage so that it helps in fulfilling my aim to reach the maximum number of students and learners. That is, with that intention, I started this channel. And those who are watching for the first time, please subscribe my channel, watch it regularly, and then see what type of benefits you get. And any other suggestions also are welcome. You can always give any suggestions or any queries. You can always ask. I will be ready to answer. So let us now start with the today's topic. Yesterday we discussed about, in my last video, I discussed about the introduction of nucleic acids, the scientists and the chemical composition of nucleic acids. So in this session, I will discuss about the structure of DNA. So let us first start with the introduction, like what are the scientists, who are all the scientists involved. The DNA, the experimental study on DNA started from Griffith. In Griffith's experiment, he conducted transformation experiment, which we are going to do in next topic in detail. And with transformation experiment, he proved the hereditary nature of DNA, hereditary nature. But he did not know that DNA is the genetic material. He just understood that there is some kind of material, some kind of substance which always exists, and that helps in transfer of genetic material. So this kind of study was performed by Griffith, and later the second study by Avery, MacLeod and McCarthy, three scientists, Avery, MacLeod and McCarthy, they provided the first evidence that DNA is genetic material. This they have done by chemical analysis of Griffith's experiment. Whatever materials or chemicals involved in DNA transformation experiment, which is bringing about the transformation process, these three scientists, they analyze those chemicals and establish that it is the DNA. Then another proof that DNA is genetic material was given by Hershey and Chase. It is the unequivocally they proved that DNA is genetic material. This they have done by transduction experiments. And then the DNA is called as the genetic material. It is also called as the chemical basis of heredity and master chemical of the cell, because it controls all the hereditary characters. So it is called as a chemical basis of cell or heredity and master chemical of the cell. Now let us try to understand DNA structure in different headings. First we completed what is introduction, where we discussed about the scientists involved. Now let us see the occurrence of DNA, where all DNA is present. So DNA is present in eukaryotes. If we take, it is found mostly in nucleus, that is in chromosomes, and a little amount of DNA is also found in nucleolus. Nucleus and nucleolus, mostly in eukaryotes, most of the DNA. And a little amount of DNA is also found in cell organelles like chloroplast and mitochondria. The difference between these two types of DNA is, in case of nuclear DNA here, in case of nuclear DNA, it lacks histones. There are no histone proteins associated, and it is mostly the DNA is linear, straight molecule. Whereas in case of cell organelles like chloroplast and mitochondria, I'll make a correction. Here In nuclear DNA, it consists of histones. Histones are present. And in organelle DNA, that is chloroplast and mitochondria, histones are absent. It lacks histones. Here it is a linear molecule and here it is a circular molecule. In case of chloroplast and mitochondria, DNA is a circular molecule. This is in case of eukaryotes. The amount of DNA found also in prokaryotes. In prokaryotes, the DNA is present in the form of circular. It is the circular DNA. Circular DNA. And this circular DNA also lacks histones, just like found in chloroplast and mitochondria. This circular DNA also lacks histones. And the space where the DNA is present in a prokaryotic cell, that is called as a nucleoid. Similarly, little amount of DNA is also present in the form of plasmids. You know, plasmids are extracircular DNA. These extracircular DNA are found in the cytoplasm of the bacterial cell, where a DNA of smaller length is present compared to that of the nucleoid. Now let us see the different lengths of DNA. Length of DNA differs from different species, one species to the other species, and the length is measured in terms of number of nucleotides present. So let us see the various examples. Bacteriophage 5x174. The length is 5386 bases. It is a single-stranded DNA. So only bases, nucleotides or bases are present. In lambda bacteriophage, 48,502 base pairs are present. This is a double-stranded DNA. E. coli, about 4.6 into 10 to the power of 6 base pairs are present. And in haploid human cell, about 3.3 into 10 to the power of minus 9 base pairs are present. So this length of DNA, it can vary from one species to the other species. Now we will discuss the structure of DNA in detail. The structure of DNA in detail. So this I am going to discuss in different subheadings. So let us see the structure of DNA. The structure of DNA was explained by Watson and Crick. Watson and Crick in the year 1953. They explained the structure as a double helical model. By using various techniques like X-ray crystallography and other techniques which are used by other scientists to understand the structure of DNA. So based on various other studies, finally Watson and Crick, they proposed a double helical model of DNA. So this double helical structure of DNA I am going to discuss in different subheadings. So first subheading, first part, DNA molecule is a double helix. DNA molecule is a double helix. So DNA is considered to be a double helix according to Watson and Crick. So there are two polynucleotide long strand. I am going to show a diagram. There are two polynucleotide strands present in DNA, and these polynucleotide strands are coiled around each other. These two are the strands, polynucleotide strands. These are coiled around each other along an imaginary axis. There is an imaginary axis. So these are coiled around each other along an imaginary axis, and it looks like twisted ladder-like structure. So what are the points we can write here? They are coiled around imaginary axis. Imaginary axis and they show twisted ladder-like structure. Twisted ladder-like structure. And they show right-handed coiling. The coiling is right-handed or clockwise coiling. Right-handed or it is called as a clockwise coiling. And they coil in such a way that they leave two gaps. One is a small gap which is called minor groove and a large gap which is called as a major groove. This is how I will show the diagram, major and minor groove. So large gap which is left, that is called major groove, and a small gap which is left, that is called as a minor groove. So they are twisted in such a way that they form alternating, they show alternating major and minor grooves. So they form alternating major and minor grooves. Major and minor grooves. They form alternating major and minor grooves. That is how they show. That is how the double helical structure is formed. So this double helical structure also gives stability to DNA molecule. It gives stability to DNA molecule because it is in a double helical manner. So now let us see the second point here, which we will see is, in the second point we will discuss the structure of each strand. We will discuss the structure of each strand. Each strand is a polynucleotide strand. It is a polynucleotide strand. That means it is made up of many nucleotides. It is made up of many nucleotides. In the earlier session, we discussed what is a nucleotide. A nucleotide consists of nitrogen base, sugar and phosphate. It consists of nitrogen base plus sugar plus phosphate. This forms one nucleotide. And this nucleotide is called as structural unit. It is called as a structural unit of DNA. I hope this is clear. I will write the subheadings. Structure of each strand. So what is each strand made up of? Each strand is a polynucleotide strand. That is made up of many nucleotides, nitrogen base, sugar and phosphate. So in one strand, if we take, in one strand, here again I will show you with the help of a diagram. So in one strand, if we take, let us understand by this diagram. This side it is one strand and adjacent to this is another strand. If we take one strand, the two nucleotides of one strand, so nitrogen base, sugar, phosphate, this forms one nucleotide. So two nucleotides of one strand, they are connected by phosphate. That is, third carbon of one sugar is connected to fifth carbon of next sugar. If you observe this strand, we are observing this strand say in one direction. Say for example, we are observing in 5' to 3'. This end is called 5' end and this end is called as a 3' end. This next topic I will tell you. So suppose we are observing in this, third carbon atom of sugar is connected to fifth of the next one. Same thing if we observe in the other strand also. Other strand also we have to observe from 5' to 3'. 5' to 3'. So when we observe from 5' to 3', again we see the same. The third carbon atom of one sugar, of one nucleotide, is connected to fifth carbon atom of next sugar of another nucleotide. This is called as 3-5- linkage. So adjacent nucleotides. So here how we can give as the successive or adjacent nucleotides. Successive nucleotides of one strand. Successive nucleotides of one strand are connected by 3' to 5' phosphodiester linkage. Phosphodiester linkage. Successive nucleotides of one strand. They are connected by phosphodiester linkage. So sugar of one, suppose this is a one sugar, I will write it separately. So suppose this is a sugar of one. Sugar is connected to here nitrogen base, say this is adenine, and another sugar, suppose this is adjacent sugar, connected to say any other nitrogen base. Of course this is the bonding present. So these two adjacent sugars are connected by phosphodiester bond. So are they connected? Third carbon of first sugar and fifth carbon of next sugar. These are connected to each other. So it is called as a 3-3' 5' phosphodiester linkage. So here you can expect a question. So this direction is same. So successive nucleotides are connected by. So what are different options you can give? One is they are connected by phosphodiester bonds. And what is the direction of phosphodiester bond is 3' 5' linkage. That is the phosphodiester bond direction. What is 3' 5' linkage? Third carbon of one sugar connected to fifth carbon of the next sugar or next nucleotide or successive nucleotide. So that is what is the structure of each strand. Now the third aspect we will discuss is complementary base pairing. What is complementary base pairing? We have just seen the structure of each strand. Now the two strands are connected to each other. Nitrogen base of one strand pair with nitrogen base of the another strand by hydrogen bonds. So how is this linkage? So let us see here I'll show you by another diagram. So here this is a sugar, this is a phosphate, sugar, and this is sugar, and this is phosphate. So sugar and phosphate, they form alternate. And one more point here you have to know, this sugar and phosphate linkage, they also form backbone of DNA molecule. They form backbone of DNA. Backbone of DNA is formed by sugar and phosphate linkages. So here we can find in this diagram the sugar and phosphate. Say this is the backbone. And the nitrogen bases which are present, they actually are present perpendicularly to that of the sugar phosphate backbone. They are projected perpendicularly. And these nucleotide, this is one side, one nucleotide, one strand. This side it is the another strand. So two opposite strands or two opposite nucleotides are connected by hydrogen bonds. These are the hydrogen bonds. So two opposite are connected by hydrogen bonds. So what is complementary base pairing? One purine always binds with one pyrimidine. Purines we have seen are adenine and guanine. Purines we know are adenine and guanine. So one purine always binds with one pyrimidine. Pyrimidines are thymine and cytosine. So adenine always binds with thymine by two hydrogen bonds, and guanine always binds with cytosine by 3 hydrogen bonds. That's what is shown here. Guanine, cytosine or adenine, thymine. These are the hydrogen bonds. So two opposite nucleotides or two opposite strands are connected by hydrogen bonds, and two adjacent nucleotides, they are connected by phosphodiester bonds. These are called as adjacent nucleotides. These are connected by phosphodiester bonds. So, advantage of complementary base pairing is, if we know the sequence of nitrogen bases of one strand, we can easily understand the sequence present on the other strand. So, it is called as a complementary base pairing. And because of this complementary base pairing, these form the steps of the ladder. Earlier we discussed the DNA shows a twisted ladder like. So these steps they are the rungs of ladder. So this base pairs, they form rungs of ladder, rungs of ladder. And distance between these two adjacent nucleotides, distance between these two nucleotides or distance between these two successive steps or rungs. This is one step, this is another step. So this distance is about 0.34 nanometers. In terms of nanometers, it is 0.34 nanometers. That is what is the complementary base pairing. Okay. Now, next aspect, let us see what is purine and pyrimidine ratio and what is it called as. The fourth aspect we will see purine and pyrimidine. Purine and pyrimidines ratio. What is the purine and pyrimidine ratio? So, due to complementary base pairing, we find the purines are always equal to pyrimidines. That is, they maintain a ratio of 1:1. This is called as a Chargaff's rule. Chargaff's rule. This can be also given as A plus G is equal to T plus C. A and G are purines, T and C are pyrimidines. So this can be given as A plus G is equal to T plus C, or we can also give it as A plus G by T plus C equal to 1. This is called as a Chargaff's rule. We have some numerical questions on this which we will discuss it later. And we also find a base ratio, Chargaff's ratio rule or Chargaff's rule if we take. This is common for all the organisms. It is same. Wherever there is a double-stranded DNA, it obeys Chargaff's rule. Or if there is a double-stranded RNA, also can obey Chargaff's rule. So it is applicable to all double-stranded DNA and also double-stranded RNA. There is another one explained which is called as a base ratio. Another one called as a base ratio. So, base ratio is not common to all species. Base ratio. So, base ratio is specific for one species. So what is this base ratio? Base ratio is AT and GC ratio. That is, A always binds with T and G binds with C. So AT and GC ratio. So AT by GC ratio, A plus T by G plus C. It is constant for only one species. Constant for one species. Constant for one species. It can vary from one species to the other species. It is not always equal to 1. It is not always equal to 1. Like in one species, the ratio may be 1 or it can be more than 1 with different values. So ratio always it is used to identify a particular species. That is called as a Bayes ratio. So in humans we find in human this ratio is about 1.53. What is this one? A plus T by G plus C ratio. This is 1.53, and E. coli it is about 0.93. E. coli is 0.93, and bacteriophage T2 bacteriophage. T2 bacteriophage it is about 1.86. So these are called as a Bayes ratio. That means AT and GC composition, that is called as a Bayes ratio. So this is what is about the purine and pyrimidine. Now let us see what is the polarity of the two strands. Next aspect we will see is what is the polarity of the strands. Polarity of the strands. So what is the meaning of polarity? So each strand if we take the polarity, we read the polarity as 5' to 3'. Once again let us go through this structure. Each strand we read it as polarity can be read as 5' to 3', that is one strand. Another strand will be always opposite in polarity, 3' to 5'. This is 5' to 3'. This will be from 3' to 5'. So this is how. So this is 5' to 3', 3' to 5'. So always polarity will be given in opposite direction. The two strands are always in opposite direction. So this feature, this is called as anti-parallel nature. It is called as a anti-parallel nature. That is called as polarity. So what is this 3' and 5'? Let us understand by this diagram. So this end we label as 5'. That means here fifth carbon is free. It is attached to phosphate. Fifth carbon. The other end will be opposite 3'. The third carbon here, it is attached to OH group. Third carbon is always attached to an OH group. Fifth carbon is attached to a phosphate. 3' and third carbon is attached to OH. That is called as a 5' and 3'. So one is in 5', other is in the opposite direction. This nature is called as anti-parallel nature of DNA. So DNA has two important structural features, that is complementary base pairing and anti-parallel nature. So how do we identify a 5' or 3'? 5' end always will have a phosphate group. 3' always will have a free OH group. So that's how we can identify 5' and 3'. Now the next aspect which we have already done is presence of major and minor group. Major and minor group. This once again I will tell you, and here we will define what is one turn of DNA also. So major and minor groups are the spaces which are left. DNA is a right-handed coiled structure or clockwise. The spaces which are left during coiling, that is called as a minor and major group. If it is a small one, it is minor. If it is a bigger one, it is called as a major. So the DNA or the distance between minor and major group, that will form one turn of DNA. That is called as a one turn of DNA. So how do we understand? The smaller space, small groove or space is called as a minor groove during coiling, and the large space is called as a major groove. Small one is called as a minor and the large one is called as major. And now if we take, just look at this diagram, distance between one minor and major groove, that is called as a one turn of DNA. So one turn of DNA includes one turn, or it is also called one coil of DNA. It includes one major and one minor groove. These major and minor grooves are formed during the coiling. DNA shows a right-handed helix. It is a right-handed coiling. Along a central imaginary axis, it shows the coiling. So during that coiling process, during the twisting around the imaginary axis, the small spaces are left. Large spaces are left. Actually, in these smaller grooves, major grooves mainly, it is a place for histone proteins. They fit into these major grooves. And then DNA along with histone proteins, we call it as a chromatin fiber. So this histone protein. So what is the importance of major groove? Major groove fits histone proteins, histones, forming a chromatin. Chromatin is formed, forming a chromatin. So that is how the chromatin can form due to association of histone. That is the significance of major and minor groove. So this we are going to discuss in the later topic, that is we are going to discuss in the structure of nucleosome. The structure of the nucleosome. So there in detail we are going to discuss about what is the major, minor groove and what is the role of histone proteins there. So there once again exactly I am going to tell you how this minor, major groove and what exactly it fits. Okay, now next, after major and minor groove, next aspect we will discuss is about the dimensions of DNA. Dimensions of DNA. What are all different measurements of DNA or dimensions of DNA? So first to start with, let us start what is the diameter of DNA. Diameter of DNA is 2 nanometers, or in terms of Armstrongs, 20 Armstrongs. That is the diameter. Diameter means also the distance between the two strands. That is called as a diameter. Then length of one turn or one coil, that is equal to 3.4 nanometers, or in terms of Armstrongs it is called 34 Armstrongs. Then distance between two pairs, two base pairs, that means two steps or ladder, that is 0.34 nanometers or 3.4 Armstrongs. That is the distance between the two. So because of this we find there are 10 base pairs present. In one turn we find there are 10 base pairs present in one complete turn. Then next one, the pitch or angle between two base pairs. Pitch or angle between two base pairs, that is 36 degrees. And angle of one turn, angle of one turn equal to 360 degrees. And in one turn we find 10 base pairs. That is the length of one turn also. In terms of base pairs we say 1 base pairs, or in terms of Armstrongs it is 34 Armstrongs. That is, what are the different dimensions of DNA. So length also can be measured in terms of the number of nucleotides present, either in terms of nanometer angstroms or length of number of nucleotides present. So more about numerical aspects I am going to discuss about DNA in my next video after completing the structure. Immediately next video I am going to discuss about what are all the numericals which we can expect understanding the DNA. So now we will discuss about the properties of DNA. Properties of DNA. Already we discussed the types and all we have completed. I think this is the last aspect here. We will discuss about the properties. Properties of DNA. Properties of DNA. So, first important feature, DNA is the most stable molecule. DNA is the most stable molecule. DNA is the most stable molecule. The stability of DNA is because of different reasons. So, in the first point, I'll give you what are all the reasons for the stability of DNA molecule. So that is the first property, and then I will give you the other properties also. So why DNA molecule is more stable? So first reason we can give is its double-stranded nature. First reason we can give is double-stranded nature. Because of it forms a double helix, it is more stable. First reason. Second reason here we can give is presence of hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bonding, that makes it more stable. Because if there is a triple bond, it becomes very difficult to break the triple bond. So hydrogen bonding, double-stranded nature. Then presence of thymine. Thymine base is also considered to be more stable. And another reason is stacking of base pairs. Stacking of base pairs. These particular points are given in the NCERT textbook also, children. So you must go through that. So these first three you know it. Double-stranded nature, hydrogen bonding, thymine. So let us see what is the meaning of stacking of base pairs. So once again I'll come back to the twisted ladder-like structure which we have discussed. So here we find, say suppose these are the two ladders, the two strands, we find this is how there is a, the two base pairs are present. Alternately these base pairs are present. Now these two adjacent nucleotides are weakly held by, between these two, there are weak van der Waals forces. Between these two, there are weak van der Waals forces. That is called as a stacking of base pairs. So once again, I will write it. The meaning of stacking of base pairs is presence of weak van der Waals forces between the two base pairs or two steps or rungs. This is how we can understand. So because of these reasons, DNA molecule becomes more stable. That is one very important property. Then next property, it has high molecular weight, many Daltons. It is measured in terms of Daltons. It is generally given as more than about 30,000 Daltons. More than about 30,000 Daltons. That is, it has a high molecular weight. And next property, it also absorbs UV light. ultraviolet light. It absorbs UV light of wavelength of about 260 nanometers. And the most important property is when DNA is exposed to, so next most important property is when DNA, when it is exposed to high temperatures or acidic conditions or alkaline conditions, the two strands will separate. This process of separation of the two strands, when the two strands separate, this process of separation of two strands, it is called as a denaturation. That means the hydrogen bonds will break. And how much temperature is required depending upon the type of bases present. If GC content is more, then they require higher temperature. Or if AT content is more, they require lower temperature. But when they are exposed to high temperature, now what is the meaning of high temperature is above 75 degrees centigrade. More than that, if it is exposed, they undergo denaturation. And if the temperature is lowered, that means up to about 50 to 60 degrees centigrade, then the two strands again they form a double helix. Two strands again can form a double helix. This process where the two strands again can form a double helix, this is called as a renaturation. Or it is also called annealing. Or it is also called as annealing. So this is related to the melting points of DNA. Melting point will, as I told you, will depend upon the GC and AT content. If GC content is more, then they have high melting point. So if GC content is more, they have high melting point. Or if AT is more compared to GC, they have low melting point. So this is how the melting point can be decided. So if the two strands separate at higher temperatures, it is called denaturation. And if they again form a double helix when temperature is lower, then it is called as a renaturation. This is very, very important property of DNA, which is actually required for, and it is being utilized for many genetic engineering experiments to form hybrid DNA. So this technique or this property is used for production of hybrid DNA, in genetic engineering. Hybrid DNA in genetic engineering. This is very, very important property. Now, last aspect which we will complete. Very few points, like what are the functions of DNA. Lastly, I'll give you the functions of DNA. So first, of course, very important function is the role of DNA in heredity. It has a hereditary function. So for hereditary function, it can perform again a function of, we can call it as autocatalysis. Autocatalysis. So first, what is autocatalysis? Autocatalysis is nothing but DNA replication. So DNA, the two strands of DNA act as template for their own replication. So replication of DNA, that is called as autocatalytic function. So you know autocatalytic function takes place during S phase of interphase. It is found during S phase of interphase. That is called autocatalytic function. Then another function is, it is also heterocatalytic function. DNA also shows heterocatalytic function. That means it helps in synthesis of other molecules. Heterocatalytic function is, it is involved in synthesis of any other molecule. Then it is called as a heterocatalytic function. So heterocatalytic function is nothing but the synthesis of other molecules. So how it synthesizes the other molecules, which we have already done, like DNA is involved in synthesis of mRNA. DNA transfers the genetic message to mRNA. This process of transferring of genetic material to mRNA or genetic information to mRNA, you know, this is called as a transcription. It is called as a transcription. And from mRNA, protein is synthesized. From mRNA, protein is synthesized. This is called as a translation. It is called as a translation. So therefore, this DNA to protein, transcription and translation, this is also called as central dogma of molecular biology. Central dogma of molecular biology. Dogma means a principle. Central Dogma of Molecular Biology by Crick. This was called as Central Dogma of Molecular Biology by Crick. So here I think I will stop my lecture, my session. I completed all the structural aspects of DNA. In my next session, I will discuss about the numericals which are related to DNA. So, thank you very much, children, and all my friends who have joined me. Thank you very much for listening. So, feel free to clarify any doubt. But most important, if you have not yet subscribed my channel, please subscribe my channel. I'll be most happy. So, thank you very much. Have a good day.